Welcome to Mystery Manor Tales. I'm your host, Elias Thorne. If you're new here, we dive into classic whodunits inspired by the greats like Agatha Christie, perfect for unwinding with a cup of tea or while drifting off to sleep. Tonight, we have a special long-form story. Death of the Butler at Silver Gatehouse, a Killer Hercule Poirot story. This is a tale of intrigue, locked doors, and the brilliant mind of Hercule Poirot himself. Settle in, dear listeners. This one's over 90 minutes of pure mystery bliss. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Silver Gatehouse. The English countryside in the autumn of 1925 was a sight to behold. A canvas painted in shades of amber and russet, where the leaves clung stubbornly to ancient trees before surrendering to the gentle, insistent tug of the wind. It was a time when the world, still recovering from the scars of the Great War, seemed to exhale a quiet sigh of relief, allowing the rhythms of rural life to resume their timeless dance. Nestled amidst the rolling hills of Kent, some 30 miles southeast of London, stood Silver Gatehouse, a sprawling estate that had watched over generations like a benevolent, if somewhat stern, patriarch. The name itself evoked images of grandeur. The entrance gates, forged from wrought iron and adorned with intricate silver filigree that caught the light like moonlight on water, marked the boundary between the ordinary world and the privileged enclave within. Silver Gatehouse had been in the Harrington family for over 2 centuries, a testament to the enduring wealth of England's landed gentry. The house itself was a magnificent example of Georgian architecture, its facade of pale stone softened by climbing ivy that whispered secrets to the breeze. Tall chimneys rose like sentinels, puffing lazy curls of smoke from the hearths below, while the windows, framed in leaded glass, gleamed with the promise of warmth and comfort inside. The grounds were equally impressive. Manicured lawns, sheer business acumen. There were tales, vague, unsubstantiated, of dealings that skirted the edges of propriety, of artifacts acquired under questionable circumstances, and partnerships that ended in shadows rather than handshakes. Sir Reginald, however, dismissed such gossip with a wave of his cigar, insisting that his wealth was as clean as the silver gates that bore his family's name. Beside him stood Lady Evelyn Harrington, his wife of nearly 30 years. A decade younger than her husband, Lady Evelyn possessed the kind of refined beauty that came from careful breeding and even more careful upkeep. Her auburn hair was always pinned in an elegant chignon, and her gowns, silk and lace from the finest Parisian houses, draped her slender figure with effortless poise. Yet, there was a fragility to her, a quiet dissatisfaction that lingered in the slight furrow of her brow, or the distant gaze she cast toward the horizon. The isolation of country life, far from the glittering social whirl of London, weighed upon her like an unseen chain. She had borne 2 children for Sir Reginald, and in them she invested much of her hopes and affections, though the years had etched lines of quiet resignation around her eyes. The elder child, Charles Harrington, was in his early 30s, a man whose potential seemed forever eclipsed by his own indulgences. Tall like his father, but lacking the same disciplined bearing, Charles had a roguish charm. Dark hair tousled just so, and a smile that could disarm even the sternest critic. He had been educated at Eton and Oxford, but his studies had been interrupted by the war, where he served briefly as an officer before returning home with a penchant for cards and horses that far outstripped his allowance. Gambling debts had become the family's poorly kept secret, a shadow that loomed over family gatherings and strained Sir Reginald's patience to its limits. Charles dreamed of reclaiming his place in society, perhaps through a fortunate marriage or a bold business venture. But for now, he lingered at Silver Gatehouse like a guest who had overstayed his welcome. Then there was Amelia, the younger Harrington, a bright-eyed young woman of 25 who had taken up semi-permanent residence at Silver Gatehouse following his retirement from a bustling London medical practice. In his mid-40s, Dr. Thorne was a man of scholarly demeanor, bespectacled, with a neatly trimmed beard and a wardrobe of tweeds that spoke of quiet, intellectual pursuits. He had tended to the Harringtons for years, delivering both Charles and Amelia into the world, and his presence offered a stabilizing influence amid the family's occasional tempests. Yet there was something enigmatic about him, a guardedness in his eyes that hinted at personal sorrows, perhaps from the war, or a lost love of his own. He spent his days in the estate's library, poring over medical journals or assisting Sir Reginald with estate matters, his calm voice a soothing balm in times of discord. Of course, no grand household could function without its devoted staff, and at Silver Gatehouse, they were the unseen threads that wove the daily tapestry. Chief among them was Mr. Alfred Jenkins, the butler, who had served the family for over 2 decades with the kind of unwavering loyalty that bordered on devotion. In his mid-50s, Jenkins was a picture of dignified efficiency. Tall and spare, with a face etched by years of quiet service, his graying hair slicked back and his livery impeccable. He had begun as Sir Reginald's valet during the Indian years, privy to the intimacies of travel and trade, and had risen to become the estate's steward of secrets. Jenkins had handled the correspondence, oversaw the servants, and anticipated needs before they were voiced. To the family he was more than a servant. He was a fixture, as enduring as the silver gates themselves. Assisting Jenkins was Miss Clara Benson, the housemaid, a young woman in her early 20s with a sharp tongue and an observant eye that missed little. Clara had come to Silver Gatehouse from a nearby village 3 years prior, her auburn hair often escaping its pins as she bustled about with feather dusters and polishing cloths. She was efficient and loyal, though her occasional wry comments suggested a wit that could cut through pretense. Spread across Europe, for his unparalleled ability to unravel the most perplexing of crimes. Poirot was a man of diminutive stature, his egg-shaped head topped by a luxuriant mustache that he waxed with meticulous care each morning. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, complete with a pocket watch chain glinting across his waistcoat, he carried himself with the air of one who knew the value of order in a chaotic world. "Monsieur le majordome," Poirot said to Jenkins, who had appeared at the door with his customary promptness. "I am Hercule Poirot. Sir Reginald awaits me, I believe." Jenkins inclined his head with a polite murmur, leading the detective through the grand foyer, where portraits of stern Harrington ancestors gazed down from the walls. The air was redolent with the scent of beeswax polish and wood smoke, a comforting aroma that belied the undercurrents of unease. Sir Reginald greeted Poirot in the drawing room, a spacious chamber paneled in dark oak and furnished with velvet-upholstered armchairs arranged around a crackling fire. The room was a haven of comfort, with shelves lined by leather-bound books and a grand piano in one corner, though it gathered dust more often than it sang. "Monsieur Poirot," You honor us with your presence, Sir Reginald said, extending a firm handshake. His voice was steady, but Poirot's keen eyes noted the slight evasion in his gaze, the way his fingers tightened just a fraction too long. Thank you for coming on such short notice. The matter is one of delicacy. Over glasses of pre-dinner sherry poured by the ever-attentive Jenkins, Sir Reginald confided his troubles. I have been receiving anonymous letters, Monsieur Poirot. Accusations of embezzlement from my time in India. Baseless, of course, but troubling nonetheless. They arrived by post, and Jenkins here handles all such correspondence. He is the only one I trust implicitly with such matters. Poirot sipped his sherry, his small black shoes planted firmly on the Persian rug, and nodded thoughtfully. Ah, the anonymous letter. It is the coward's weapon, n'est-ce pas? But often it reveals more about the sender than the recipient. The formal dining room. The long mahogany table was set with fine china and crystal, silverware gleaming under the chandelier's soft glow. Sir Reginald took his place at the head, Lady Evelyn to his right, her necklace of pearls catching the light as she arranged her napkin. Charles slouched into his seat opposite, already nursing a glass of whiskey, his eyes shadowed by what might have been worry or weariness. Amelia sat beside Dr. Thorne, her fingers lightly brushing the edge of her wineglass, while the doctor offered a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Jenkins and Clara moved silently about the room, serving the first course, a clear consommé steaming gently, while Finch, excused from such duties, could be glimpsed through the window, securing the garden tools against the rising wind. The conversation began amiably enough, with Dr. Thorne regaling the table with an anecdote from his London days. I recall a case of a most peculiar ailment. Nothing so dramatic as your Indian adventures, Reginald, but it taught me the value of observation. Sir Reginald chuckled, though it sounded forced. Observation, yes. One must always be vigilant. But the harmony was short-lived. Charles, emboldened by his drink, leaned forward. Father, about those investments you mentioned, might there be room for me to join in? My debts, well, they're mounting, as you know. Sir Reginald's face tightened. Charles, this is neither the time nor the place. We have a guest. The young man subsided, but not before casting a sullen glance around the table. Amelia, sensing the tension, attempted to lighten the mood. Dr. Thorne, you've seen so much of the world through your patient's stories. Tell us, what do you make of these modern novels? The ones with all the psychological twists. Thorne inclined his head toward her, a warmth in his voice that seemed reserved just for her. They remind us, Miss Amelia, that the human heart is a labyrinth far more complex than any estate. Lady Evelyn remained largely silent, her gaze drifting to the fog-shrouded windows, as if seeking escape in the misty night beyond. The hidden alliances. Little did they know, this gathering was to be the prelude to tragedy. At precisely 9 o'clock, as the clock's chimes echoed through the house, Jenkins excused himself. If there is nothing further, sir, he said to Sir Reginald, bowing slightly. Good night, then. With that, he retired to his quarters in the east wing, a modest but comfortable room adjoining the servants' hall, secured by a sturdy door that he always locked from the inside for privacy. The fog outside had thickened into an impenetrable veil, shrouding Silver Gatehouse in isolation. The family dispersed. Sir Reginald to his study, Lady Evelyn to her boudoir, Charles to the billiard room, Amelia and Dr. Thorne lingering briefly by the fire. Poirot, shown to his guest room by Clara, paused at the window, gazing into the night. "Curious," he murmured to himself. "Very curious indeed." And so the stage was set at Silver Gatehouse, where secrets simmered like the embers in the grate, waiting for the spark that would ignite them into flame. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Night. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Mystery Manor Tales. I'm your host, Elias Thorne, guiding you through the fog-laden paths of our tale. Death of the Butler at Silver Gatehouse. A Killer Hercule Poirot Story. If you're just joining us, you're in for a treat. A classic whodunit set in the elegant yet shadowy halls of a 1920s English estate. For those returning, thank you for staying with us as the mystery deepens. Picture yourself by a crackling fire, perhaps with a warm drink, as we unravel the next chapter of this 90-minute journey. Before we dive in, a quick word. I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Are you tucked away in a cozy corner of Edinburgh, or perhaps across the pond in Toronto? Drop it in the comments. It's like four-poster bed draped in damask, a mahogany writing desk, and a window overlooking the lake, though tonight it revealed only the swirling fog. Poirot sat at the desk, a small notebook open before him, his fountain pen poised as he murmured to himself. The anonymous letters. They are the key, n'est-ce pas? But to what lock? His little gray cells, as he so fondly called them, were already at work, sifting through the evening's observations, the strained silences, the fleeting glances, the undercurrents of unease that had permeated the dining room. Downstairs, the drawing room was still aglow with the embers of the fire, casting long shadows across the velvet armchairs. Charles Harrington, the wayward son, paced restlessly, his whiskey glass empty but clutched tightly in his hand. His dark hair was disheveled, and his eyes burned with a mix of defiance and desperation. "Father, you must understand," he said, his voice low but urgent, addressing Sir Reginald, who sat in a high-backed chair, a cigar smoldering between his fingers. "My debts, they're not just numbers on a ledger. These men, they don't wait politely." Sir Reginald's face hardened, his mustache twitching with irritation. "Enough, Charles," he snapped, his tone cutting through the room like a blade. "You've squandered enough of the family's fortune. I'll not have this discussion again, not with a guest like Monsieur Poirot under our roof." Charles stopped pacing, his jaw tightening, but he said no more, retreating to the billiard room with a muttered curse. Across the house, in the library, a room lined with leather-bound tomes and lit by a single green-shaded lamp, Amelia Harrington met Dr. Victor Thorne in secret. The library was a sanctuary of sorts, its heavy curtains drawn against the fog, the air scented with old paper and wax. Amelia, her auburn curls catching the lamplight, leaned close to the doctor, her voice barely above a whisper. "Victor, we can't go on like this. Father suspects. Jenkins, too, I think." He brushed the doorframe, her expression unreadable. Regret, perhaps, or fear. After a moment, she turned away, her footsteps fading as she ascended the grand staircase to her boudoir, where a single candle burned against the encroaching dark. Outside in the gardens, the fog was so dense that the lanterns along the paths glowed like distant stars. Harold Finch, the gardener, stood near the servants' entrance, his pipe glowing faintly as he puffed in silence. His weathered face was set in a scowl, his eyes scanning the shadows as if expecting trouble. Had he overheard the argument between Charles and Sir Reginald? Or was he guarding a secret of his own? The war had left its mark on Finch, not just in the scars hidden beneath his rough jacket, but in the guarded way he spoke of his past. A past Jenkins, with his knack for uncovering truths, might have stumbled upon. Miss Clara Benson, the housemaid, was the last to retire, her chores keeping her in the kitchen until the clock struck 10. She scrubbed the last of the dinner pots, her sharp eyes catching every detail. The way the silverware was slightly misaligned, the faint smudge on a wine glass that suggested someone had lingered over their drink. Clara was observant, perhaps too much so, and her quick wit had earned her both Jenkins's respect and the occasional ire of the family. As she extinguished the kitchen lamps, she paused, hearing a faint sound. A creak, perhaps, or a footfall. She dismissed it as the house settling, but her unease lingered as she made her way to her small room near the east wing. At midnight, a sound pierced the stillness. A muffled thud, like a heavy book falling, or a door slamming shut in the distance. It was faint, swallowed almost immediately by the fog and the thick walls of Silver Gatehouse. No one stirred. Sir Reginald in his study assumed it was the wind rattling a window. Lady Evelyn in her boudoir was lost in her thoughts, a letter half written on her desk. Charles in the billiard room was too deep in his whiskey to notice. Amelia and Dr. Thorne, still in the library, froze briefly, but attributed it to the storm brewing outside. Poirot in his guest room stirred slightly, his instinct tightened in her chest. She reached Jenkins's door, a heavy oak panel, always locked from the inside at night. A habit from his years in India when vigilance was second nature. "Mr. Jenkins?" "Sir?" she called, knocking sharply. No answer. She knocked again, louder, her voice rising with a tremor. "Mr. Jenkins, are you there?" Silence. Panic rising, Clara hurried to fetch Sir Reginald, who was in his study reviewing ledgers. "Sir, it's Jenkins. He's not answering, and his door's locked." Sir Reginald, his face paling, summoned Charles and Dr. Thorne, who were just emerging from their rooms. Together they hastened to the east wing, Poirot joining them, his small frame moving with surprising agility. "What is this commotion, mes amis?" he asked, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. Clara stood by the door wringing her hands, while Sir Reginald pounded on it. "Jenkins, open this at once!" No response. With a nod from Sir Reginald, Charles and Dr. Thorne put their shoulders to the door, forcing it open with a splintering crack. The room beyond was small but orderly, lit by a single window that admitted the gray morning light. There, slumped over his desk, was Alfred Jenkins, dead. A single gunshot wound marred his temple. The blood congealed in a dark pool beneath his head. In his right hand he clutched a pistol, its barrel still faintly warm. The window was bolted shut, the room undisturbed save for the body. A half-finished cup of tea sat on the desk, cold now. Beside a neatly stacked pile of letters, some bearing the seal of Sir Reginald's correspondence. The key to the room lay on the floor beneath Jenkins, as if dropped in his final moments. The household gasped, Clara stifling a sob as Lady Evelyn, summoned by the commotion, appeared in the doorway, her hand flying to her mouth. "Good God!" Sir Reginald whispered, his voice hoarse. Charles stared, his face ashen, outside Jenkins' door. Dr. Thorne, with his medical knowledge, could have tampered with the scene, though the wound suggested a bullet, not poison. Finch, who had quarreled with Jenkins over estate matters, clenched his jaw. Even Sir Reginald, who trusted Jenkins implicitly, might have had reason to silence a man who knew too much about India. Poirot turned to the group, his mustache twitching slightly. "Each of you, I must know, where were you last night at midnight when this tragedy occurred? And do not omit the smallest detail, for in the details the truth hides." The police would be called, but the fog would delay them, leaving Poirot to take charge. "We must preserve this scene," he declared, his voice firm. "The little gray cells, they are already at work, and they demand order." As the household stood frozen, the fog outside seemed to press closer, sealing Silver Gatehouse in its grasp. The death of Alfred Jenkins was no accident. It was murder, and the killer was among them. Chapter 3. The Arrival of Suspicion. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Mystery Manor Tales. I'm your host, Elias Thorne, guiding you deeper into the shadows of our chilling tale. Death of the Butler at Silver Gatehouse, a Killer Hercule Poirot story. If you're joining us for the first time, imagine yourself stepping into the misty English countryside of 1925, where secrets lurk behind every polished door. For our loyal sleuths, thank you for staying with us as the plot thickens. Picture yourself in a cozy nook, perhaps with a blanket and a cup of tea, as we unravel Chapter 3 of this 90-minute journey. Quickly now, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening from tonight? A quiet hamlet in Yorkshire, or maybe a bustling apartment in Sydney? Drop it in the comments. It's like joining me by the fire at Silver Gatehouse. If you're gripped by this mystery, do hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more soothing whodunits. Now let's return to the fog. Watch him as he adjusted his immaculate tie and surveyed the assembled company. Sir Reginald Harrington sat rigidly in an armchair, his mustache bristling with barely contained agitation. Lady Evelyn, pale and composed, clutched a lace handkerchief, her eyes darting to the fogged windows. Charles Harrington slouched against the mantel, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, while Amelia clung to Dr. Victor Thorne's arm, their closeness betraying more than friendship. Miss Clara Benson, the housemaid, stood near the door, her sharp eyes red-rimmed but alert. Harold Finch, the gardener, hovered at the edge of the group, his pipe unlit, his weathered face set in a scowl. Poirot's voice, soft yet piercing, cut through the tense silence. "Mes amis, a crime has been committed, a most audacious crime. Alfred Jenkins was murdered, and the killer is among us. The locked room, the bolted window, they are but illusions, designed to confound. But Hercule Poirot is not so easily deceived. We shall begin with order and method. Inspector Japp will arrive soon, but until then I must ask, where were each of you at midnight when this tragedy struck?" The question hung in the air, heavy as the fog outside. Before answers could be given, The distant sound of a motor car announced the arrival of Inspector Japp from Scotland Yard, his burly figure emerging from the mist like a harbinger of justice. "Poirot, old chap," he exclaimed, brushing rain from his coat as he entered. "What have you dragged me into this time? A butler shot in a locked room? Sounds like one of your infernal puzzles." Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "Ah, Inspector, it is a puzzle most delicious. But come, we must secure the scene and begin the investigation." Japp, grumbling about the weather, sealed Jenkins's room, instructing Clara not to touch anything. The small space remained as it was. The desk with its cold teacup, the stack of letters, the locked safe in the corner, and the key to him of embezzlement in India, but insisted they were false. Why kill him? He was helping me trace the sender. I was in my study at midnight, reviewing accounts. Poirot nodded, his eyes narrowing. "And these accounts, Sir Reginald, did Jenkins have access to them?" Sir Reginald hesitated. "Yes, but he was loyal. I trusted him implicitly." Yet the flicker in his eyes suggested doubt. Lady Evelyn followed, her elegance marred by a slight tremor in her hands. "I barely spoke to Jenkins last night," she said, her voice low. He once helped me with a personal matter, years ago." Pressed by Poirot's gentle but relentless questioning, she revealed a secret. Jenkins had covered for her during a brief indiscretion in her youth, before her marriage. It was nothing scandalous, you understand, just a moment of weakness. But he kept it quiet. Poirot tilted his head. "And this secret, madame, did it resurface recently?" Her eyes widened, but she shook her head. "No, it was long buried." Yet her hesitation suggested otherwise, and Poirot made a mental note. Motive? To silence a past she wished to forget. Charles Harrington was next, his demeanor defensive as he sprawled in the chair, his tie askew. "Yes, I argued with father, about money as usual. But Jenkins, he was just the butler. I was in my room at midnight, alone." His alibi was weak, unsupported by witnesses, and Poirot's gaze lingered on him. "Monsieur Charles, Jenkins advised your father against paying your debts, no? Debts that, I understand, are considerable." Charles flushed, his fingers tightening. "Thousands, yes. But I didn't kill him for it. I'm not that desperate." Yet his evasive glance told another story, and Poirot noted the safe in Jenkins' room where Sir Reginald kept cash, accessible perhaps to a butler who knew the combination. Amelia Harrington entered nervously, her auburn curls pinned tightly, as if to restrain her emotions. "I was in the library." Questions. No poison was found in the body, yet. But the gunshot was definitive. Or was it? Harold Finch, the gardener, was surly, his pipe clenched unlit in his hand. "I was in me cottage, mindin' my own business," he growled. "Heard nothin', saw nothin'. Jenkins was nosy, always pokin' into the grounds, askin' about my work." A recent quarrel over missing tools hinted at deeper tension, perhaps tied to Finch's war record, which Jenkins might have uncovered. "The war," Poirot mused aloud. "It leaves scars, does it not? Scars that some wish to keep hidden." Finch's scowl deepened, but he offered no more. Miss Clara Benson, the last to be interviewed, was tearful but composed. "Mr. Jenkins was kind to me," she said, wiping her eyes. "He treated me like a daughter. But last night I heard him argue with someone, around 11 near his room. I couldn't tell who, but it was heated. Her observation was a spark in the fog, but her lack of specificity frustrated Poirot. Mademoiselle Clara, you are observant. Did you see anything unusual? She shook her head. Only the usual comings and goings. Lady Evelyn in the hall, Charles sneaking out to the billiard room. Poirot's mustache twitched. A witness, perhaps, or a player in the game. With interviews complete, Poirot returned to Jenkins' room, Jap at his side. The pistol was confirmed as Jenkins' own, kept in his desk for protection. Fingerprints, only his, though smudged, suggesting careful handling. The teacup, sent for analysis, later revealed traces of sedative, not lethal, but enough to induce drowsiness. The safe remained locked, its contents unknown. A letter fragment in the fireplace, half-burned, read, "Your secret safe no longer." A clue? Or a red herring? Poirot paced, his shoes clicking on the floorboards. The locked room, it is a lie. No secret passages, no tampered bolts. Yet the key inside, the door locked. How? Suspicion had taken root, and as the household retired, each glance was a question, each silence an accusation. Poirot in his room opened his notebook, adding a single word. Motive. The little gray cells were restless, and the truth, he knew, was closer than it seemed. Chapter 4. Shadows of the Past. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Mystery Manor Tales. I'm your host, Elias Thorne, inviting you once more into the fog-draped world of Death of the Butler at Silver Gatehouse, a Killer Hercule Poirot story. If you're new here, you've stepped into a classic whodunit, where every shadow hides a secret, and every clue could be a trap. For those who've been with us through the twists, thank you for staying as the mystery deepens. Picture yourself in a quiet corner, perhaps with a flickering candle, as we unravel Chapter 4 of this 90-minute journey. Now, a quick moment to connect. Where are you listening from tonight? A cozy flat in London, or maybe a seaside cottage in Cornwall? Drop it in the comments. I love picturing our little community gathered around this tale. And here's a question to ponder. Who's your top suspect so far? Share below, and let's see if you're outsmarting Poirot himself. If you're enjoying this, do like, subscribe, and tap that bell for more soothing mysteries. Now, let's return to Silver Gatehouse, where the past casts long shadows, and Hercule Poirot is closing in on the truth. The second day at Silver Gatehouse dawned under a sky heavy with rain, the clouds pressing low over the Kentish hills like a lid on a simmering pot. The silver gates, slick with moisture, reflected the gray light in distorted glimmers, as if guarding secrets too slippery to hold. Inside the great house, the air was thick with unease. The death of Alfred Jenkins, a gunshot in a locked room, hanging over the household like a storm waiting to break. Hercule Poirot, his mustache immaculate despite the hour, paced the library, his small black shoes clicking rhythmically on the polished floor. Inspector Japp, ever practical, had stationed a constable at Jenkins' room to preserve the scene, but it was Poirot's little gray cells that drove the investigation. Tapestry of ambition and shadow. As a young man, he had served as a colonial administrator, amassing wealth through trade in spices and textiles. But whispers, persistent in London's clubrooms, suggested he had also dealt in artifacts, some acquired through less than honest means. Jenkins, his valet during those years, had been privy to every transaction, every late-night deal in Calcutta's markets. Did Jenkins know of these irregularities? Poirot asked, his voice gentle but probing. Sir Reginald's mustache twitched. He was loyal, Monsieur Poirot. If there were irregularities, and I deny them, he never spoke of them, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Motive? To silence a witness to past sins. Lady Evelyn was next, her elegance strained by the weight of scrutiny. Seated in a high-backed chair, her hands folded tightly, she spoke of her early years with Sir Reginald. Jenkins was more than a servant, she admitted. When I was young, foolish, I strayed. A brief affair, before my marriage. Jenkins arranged for the matter to be discreetly resolved. A child, sent to a good family. Her voice broke, and Poirot leaned forward. This child, madame, did Jenkins ever threaten to reveal her existence? Lady Evelyn shook her head, but her eyes were haunted. He swore secrecy, but lately, he seemed troubled, as if he regretted his silence. A motive, perhaps, to bury a secret that could ruin her standing, or more. Charles Harrington's interview was a study in defiance. Sprawled in the library chair, his tie loosened and his eyes bloodshot, he admitted his gambling debts had spiraled to nearly £10,000, owed to unsavory figures in London's underbelly. Jenkins, he confessed, had urged Sir Reginald to cut him off, warning that bailing him out would only fuel his vices. He was a meddler, Charles spat, then caught himself. But I didn't kill him. I was in my room, as I said. Poirot's gaze lingered on the young man's trembling hands. Sympathetic to us, he said, adjusting his spectacles. He saw my intentions were genuine, unlike Sir Reginald, who sees only my lack of title. Poirot probed further. And your sedatives, doctor, those prescribed to Jenkins, were they secure? Thorne hesitated. I keep my bag locked, but I noticed a vial missing yesterday. Not enough to kill, mind you. The admission hung in the air. A clue or a misdirection? Thorne's past, Poirot discovered, held a shadow, a malpractice suit from his London days, hushed up but known to Jenkins. Another motive, perhaps, to silence a man who could expose him. Harold Finch, the gardener, was last, his gruff demeanor unchanged. Jenkins was always snooping, he growled, his pipe clenched unlit. Caught him going through my tool shed once, asking about my war days. Nosy blighter. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Finch's war record, obtained through Japp's contacts, hinted at desertion under fire, a charge never proven, but whispered in the village. Had Jenkins uncovered this, threatening Finch's quiet life? You quarreled with him, oui? Poirot pressed. Finch shrugged. Over missing shears, nothing more. But his evasiveness spoke volumes. With interviews done, Poirot returned to Jenkins's room, the rain now a steady drumbeat outside. New clues emerged. A footprint in the mud beneath the window, Finch's boot size, though the window remained bolted. A red herring. Poirot examined the fireplace where the burned letter fragment, "Your secret safe no longer," suggested blackmail. The safe, still locked, yielded a surprise when opened with a key found in Jenkins's pocket, not the room key but a smaller one, hidden in his waistcoat. Inside, documents proving Sir Reginald's embezzlement in India, and a will naming Clara Benson, the housemaid, as Jenkins's sole beneficiary, a modest sum, but enough to raise eyebrows. Clara, tearful, admitted Jenkins was her uncle, not just her employer. He wanted me to have a future, she said. A motive for her, or another misdirection? False clues abounded. A handkerchief. Evelyn excused herself, her headache a convenient escape. Clara, serving the meal, overheard Charles whisper to Amelia, Jenkins knew too much about all of us. Finch, glimpsed outside, lingered near the servants' entrance, his pipe glowing like a warning. Poirot, observing from the head of the table, leaned toward Japp. The web tightens, Inspector. Each thread leads to another, but which is the true path? As night fell, the rain intensified, battering the windows like an impatient interrogator. Poirot retired to the library, his notebook now filled with sketches, diagrams of the room, timelines of movements, lists of motives. The anonymous letters, he mused aloud. They are the key. But who wrote them? And why kill Jenkins before their purpose was fulfilled? He paused, his pen hovering. A new clue. A faint scratch on the window latch, barely visible, suggesting tampering. But the bolt held firm. Another red herring, or a sign the killer had planned an alternative entry. The household retired uneasily, each member casting glances over their shoulders. Clara lingered in the hall, her sharp eyes catching a shadow moving toward the east wing. Was it Finch, or someone else? Amelia and Thorne whispered in the library, their voices low but urgent. Charles in the billiard room downed another whiskey, his hands shaking. Sir Reginald, in his study, stared at the safe's key, his face a mask of dread. Lady Evelyn, in her boudoir, clutched a locket. A keepsake from her lost child, perhaps? Poirot, alone in his room, gazed into the rain-swept night. The past, he murmured. It is never truly buried. It rises, like the fog, to choke the present. The little gray cells were restless, piecing together a puzzle, where every clue seemed to point in two directions at once. The killer, he knew, was growing bolder and more desperate. Chapter 5. Unearthed Secrets. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Mystery Manor Tales. The past are clawing their way to the surface. The third day at Silver Gatehouse dawned with a relentless drizzle, the rain weaving a curtain of gray that seemed to trap the estate in a perpetual twilight. The silver gates, slick with moisture, stood as silent sentinels, guarding a house where trust had eroded like the banks of the nearby lake. The murder of Alfred Jenkins, found shot in a locked room with a pistol in his hand, had shattered the household's fragile harmony. Hercule Poirot, his mustache as precise as ever, stood in the library, his small frame radiating a quiet authority. Inspector Japp, pacing nearby, muttered about the weather and the lack of clear evidence. This locked room business, Poirot. It's got me stumped. No footprints, no secret passages. You sure it's not suicide? Poirot's eyes gleamed. No, Inspector. The little gray cells, they protest. This is a murder most cunning, and the truth is close. The autopsy report, delivered by a sodden constable, brought new complications. Jenkins had died from the gunshot wound, but traces of sedative in his system, Dr. Thorne's prescription, had rendered him drowsy, perhaps defenseless, before the shot. The time of death was confirmed as midnight, aligning with the muffled thud heard by some in the house. Alibis, already shaky, began to crumble. Poirot gathered the household in the drawing room, the fire casting flickering shadows across their tense faces. Sir Reginald Harrington sat rigidly, his hands clenched. Lady Evelyn's composure wavered, her lace handkerchief twisted into knots. Charles Harrington slouched, his eyes darting nervously. Amelia clung to Dr. Victor Thorne, whose scholarly calm seemed strained. Clara Benson, the housemaid, hovered near the door, her sharp eyes clouded with grief. Harold Finch, the gardener, stood apart, his pipe unlit, his scowl deeper than ever. Poirot's voice cut through the silence. Mes amis, the puzzle grows complex. They stepped out to the gardens around 11. Needed air after arguing with father. I saw Finch near the servants' entrance, smoking his pipe. Finch bristled, but Poirot raised a hand. Monsieur Finch, you claimed to be in your cottage. Yet Charles places you here. Explain. Finch's jaw tightened. I was checking the grounds. Jenkins had been nosy about my tools, thought he might have taken something. His alibi, already weak, now seemed a fabrication. And the footprint beneath Jenkins's window, matching Finch's boots, took on new significance. Amelia, her face pale, spoke softly. I was in the library, as I said, but Victor and I talked longer than I admitted. Jenkins knew about us, and he approved, despite father's objections. He wouldn't have betrayed us. Dr. Thorne nodded, but Poirot's gaze sharpened. And yet, Docteur, your sedative was in Jenkins's tea. A coincidence? Thorne adjusted his spectacles. I prescribed it for his insomnia. Someone could have tampered with it. The missing vial from his bag loomed large, a clue or a convenient excuse. Clara, tearful, added a new twist. I heard Jenkins arguing with someone, around 11, as I said. But I also saw a shadow moving toward the east wing later, near midnight. I thought it was Lady Evelyn, but it might have been someone else. Her observation muddied the timeline, suggesting another presence near Jenkins's room. Poirot's mustache twitched. A shadow, mademoiselle. Most intriguing. The investigation deepened with a startling discovery. Poirot, re-examining Jenkins's room, found a hidden diary tucked beneath a loose floorboard. Not a secret passage, as he'd briefly hoped, but a trove of revelations. Jenkins's neat handwriting detailed his role as Sir Reginald's valet in India, hinting at unethical transactions he had witnessed but never reported. More shocking, the diary revealed Jenkins had been gently blackmailing Sir Reginald, not for money, but for justice, urging him to confess his embezzlement. The entries stopped abruptly 3 days before his death, as if Jenkins sensed, even hinted he'd help us financially. This tied to the will in the safe, naming Clara as beneficiary. Perhaps Jenkins intended to aid Amelia too, raising questions about Thorne's motives. Had he killed to secure Amelia's future, or to silence Jenkins' knowledge of his malpractice past? Finch's alibi unraveled further when a village barkeep, questioned by Jap, admitted lying about seeing him at the pub. He paid me to say it, the man confessed. Finch, confronted, admitted arguing with Jenkins over personal matters, but insisted he was no killer. The footprint, he claimed, was from routine gardening near the window, yet the rain-soaked ground suggested it was recent. A red herring, or damning evidence? Poirot tested theories in the locked room. Suppose the killer entered before Jenkins locked the door, hid, then shot him. No space for hiding. A duplicate key, perhaps? He examined the lock again, finding faint scratches, not from the break-in but older, suggesting someone had practiced picking it. Clara, questioned again, admitted Jenkins taught her basic lock-picking for household emergencies. He said it was useful, she said, blushing. A skill or a motive? Tensions peaked at dinner, a near fiasco of accusations. Charles, emboldened by whiskey, accused Thorne of manipulating Amelia. "You're after her money, and Jenkins called you out." Thorne's calm cracked. "You're a wastrel, Charles, projecting your own greed." Amelia stood, tears in her eyes. "Stop it, both of you. Jenkins was kind to us all." Sir Reginald slammed his glass down, silencing the room. "This is a house of mourning, not a circus." Lady Evelyn, pale, excused herself, her locket clutched tightly, a clue to her past, or another distraction. Poirot, observing, leaned toward Japp. "The killer grows nervous, Inspector. These outbursts, they are the cracks in the facade." Japp grunted. "Cracks or no, we need evidence, not your gray cells." But Poirot's mind was racing. The sedative, the diary, the second letter, the scratched lock, all pointed to a meticulous plan. Yet the threads. A new clue nagged at him, a faint burn mark on Jenkins's desk, not from the fireplace, but perhaps from a cigarette, yet Jenkins didn't smoke. Whose then? The little gray cells buzzed, sensing the truth was near, yet maddeningly elusive. Chapter 6. The Revelation. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Mystery Manor Tales. I'm your host, Elias Thorne, leading you through the heart of our shadowy tale. Death of the Butler at Silver Gatehouse, a Killer Hercule Poirot story. If you're just tuning in, you've entered a web of deception in 1920s England, where a locked room hides deadly truths. For our faithful followers, thank you for enduring the suspense. We're nearing the revelations now. Settle in with a spot of tea, the rain still pattering outside your window, as we delve into Chapter 6 of this 90-minute odyssey. A quick pause to engage. With all the twists so far, who's your prime suspect? Dr. Thorne? Charles? Or someone unexpected? Tell me in the comments. I read every one, and it's fascinating to see your deductions rival Poirot's. If this chapter's revelations have you hooked, like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more classic mysteries to unwind with. Now, let's return to Silver Gatehouse, where the fog lifts just enough to reveal cracks in the facade, and Hercule Poirot's little gray cells are igniting like fireworks. As the third night descended upon Silver Gatehouse, the rain had eased into a persistent mist, cloaking the estate in a veil that mirrored the obfuscations within. The silver gates loomed ghostly in the twilight, and the house itself seemed to creak with anticipation, its ancient beams echoing the growing unrest of its inhabitants. Alfred Jenkins's murder, shot in a locked room, sedated and staged as suicide, had unraveled threads of secrets, from embezzlement in India to forbidden romances and hidden pasts. Hercule Poirot, pacing the library with his characteristic precision, felt the puzzle coalescing. Inspector Japp, slumped in an armchair with a brandy, watched him warily. "You've got that look, Poirot," seemed to judge them all. Sir Reginald Harrington sat at the head, his face gaunt with worry. Lady Evelyn beside him clutched her locket, her eyes distant. Charles Harrington nursed a whiskey, his slouch betraying defiance masking fear. Amelia Harrington leaned on Dr. Victor Thorne for support, their hands brushing secretly. Clara Benson, the housemaid, stood by the door, her sharp features etched with exhaustion, while Harold Finch lingered at the periphery, his pipe finally lit, smoke curling like unanswered questions. Poirot addressed them, his voice measured and deliberate. "Mes amis, we have danced around the truth long enough. Let us examine the clues with logic. The autopsy. Sedative in the tea, enough to cloud the mind but not kill. Who had access? Dr. Thorne, you prescribed it. Thorne stiffened, his spectacles glinting. For insomnia, as I said. Anyone could have taken it from my bag. Poirot nodded. Oui, but the timing. The tea was prepared in the kitchen, served by Clara. Yet Jenkins drank it alone in his room. Someone laced it earlier, or persuaded him to take it. He paced slowly, building the deduction step by step. The gunshot. No powder burns. Angle awkward for suicide. The pistol, Jenkins's own. Fingerprints only his, but smudged, as if wiped partially. The room locked from inside, key on the floor. How does the killer enter, kill and escape? A string trick, perhaps, threaded through the keyhole. Turning the key from outside after locking, then pulled back under the door. The faint scratches on the lock, the burn mark on the desk from a cigarette butt ground out in haste. These are the traces. Gasps rippled through the room. Charles bolted upright. That's preposterous. Who'd think of such a thing? Poirot's eyes swept them. Someone clever, desperate. Now, the diary. Jenkins blackmailing Sir knew this, Evelyn, and tolerated it? Chaos threatened. Charles accused his mother of hypocrisy. Amelia reeled in betrayal. Thorne comforted her silently. Finch muttered about family rot, while Clara wept, confirming, "He was my uncle, but he spoke of a lost sibling. Amelia's half-brother or sister, perhaps, sent away." Poirot raised a hand, restoring order. "This explains motives abound. Lady Evelyn, to preserve your marriage. Sir Reginald, your reputation. Amelia, if Jenkins threatened your inheritance with this truth. Dr. Thorne, you opposed Jenkins because he knew your malpractice suit, and perhaps doubted your intentions with Amelia." Thorne protested. "I loved her. Jenkins approved our union." But Poirot pressed. "Yet he changed his mind, hinting in his diary at your fortune hunting. The missing sedative vial. Yours." More twists unfolded. The footprint outside, Finch's, but explained he'd confronted Jenkins earlier about war secrets, leaving it then. The burned letter fragment from Jenkins's own draft. The handkerchief planted by Charles, who admitted in panic, "I suspected Thorne and dropped it to misdirect." Red herrings peeled away, revealing the core. The string trick required access to fine thread, curtain ties in the hall, one missing, fibers matching a snag on Thorne's cuff. But before full accusation, a scream pierced the night. Finch, stepping outside for air, was found slumped in the garden, struck from behind. A blunt wound, unconscious, but alive. "The killer strikes again," Japp bellowed, rousing the constable. Poirot knelt beside Finch, who groaned awake. "Saw a shadow with a spade." Tools from Finch's shed, another attempt to silence a suspect or divert attention. The household scattered in panic. Clara locked herself in the kitchen, fearing she was next as Jenkins's heir. Charles barricaded his room, whiskey forgotten. Amelia and Thorne huddled in the library, whispering plans to flee. Sir Reginald confronted Lady Evelyn in tears. "Our life, a lie!" Poirot, with Japp, secured Finch and pondered. "Is incomplete. One more piece." As midnight approached, the mist thickened. Silver Gatehouse a cauldron of exposed sins. Poirot gathered them again. The family secret. Jenkins and Lady Evelyn's affair produced no child. It was a ruse in the diary to protect Clara, his true daughter, from another liaison. The locket? A red herring from Evelyn's genuine past indiscretion. Shocks compounded. Clara, wide-eyed. He was my father? Yes. Motive for her shifted from inheritance to patricide? No. Poirot deduced her innocence. The attack on Finch, self-inflicted? None. Witnessed by a servant. The killer, cornered, had struck to frame another. Poirot's eyes locked on Thorne. You, doctor. Medical knowledge for the sedative dose. Access to keys as family friend. Motive threefold. Silence Jenkins' opposition. Cover your past. Secure fortune. Thorne lunged in denial, but Japp restrained him. The gathering stormed, revelations cascading. Justice nears, Poirot declared. But the full truth waited. The locked room's final secret poised to unlock. Chapter 7. Justice Served. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Mystery Manor Tales. I'm your host, Elias Thorne, guiding you to the thrilling conclusion of our tale, Death of the Butler at Silver Gatehouse, a Killer Hercule Poirot story. If you're new here, you've stepped into a classic whodunit where secrets unravel in a fog-draped English estate. For our dedicated sleuths, thank you for staying with us through every twist and turn. Picture yourself by a cozy hearth, the world outside quiet, as we unveil Chapter 7 of this 90-minute journey, the moment justice is served. Before we dive in, let's connect. Where are you listening from tonight? A snowy cabin in Oslo? Or perhaps a sunny patio in Cape Town? Share it in the comments. It's like joining me in the drawing room at Silver Gatehouse. And here's a question. Did you guess the killer? Drop your thoughts below. I'm dying to know if Poirot's final piece of the puzzle was yet to fall. The household gathered in the drawing room at Poirot's command, the fire now a steady blaze, its warmth at odds with the chill of suspicion. Sir Reginald Harrington sat rigidly, his face etched with resignation. Lady Evelyn, her locket abandoned, looked fragile, her eyes red from tears. Charles Harrington, sober for once, stood by the window, his hands clenched. Amelia Harrington sat apart from Dr. Thorne, her trust shaken by accusations. Thorne himself, pale behind his spectacles, maintained a defiant calm. Clara Benson, the housemaid and Jenkins's niece, clutched a handkerchief, her sharp features softened by grief. Harold Finch, bandaged from his attack, glowered from the corner, his pipe unlit. Inspector Japp, arms crossed, watched Poirot with a mix of skepticism and anticipation. Poirot stood before the fireplace, his small frame commanding attention. "Mes amis," he began, his voice steady and deliberate. "We have reached the end of this labyrinth. The murder of Alfred Jenkins was a crime of precision, designed to deceive. But the little gray cells of Hercule Poirot, they see through the fog. Let us unravel the final threads." He paced slowly, his shoes clicking on the polished floor. The locked room. It was the heart of the puzzle. A door locked from inside, a key on the floor, a window bolted shut. No secret passages, no tampered bolts. How, then, was Jenkins killed? The answer lies in simplicity. The sedative in his tea, Dr. Thorne's prescription, rendered him drowsy, defenseless. The killer entered his room, shot him at close range, and staged the suicide. But the door, locked after the fact, using a string trick. Fine curtain thread pulled through the keyhole to turn the key from outside, then slipped under the door and burned in the fireplace. The ashes, they matched the silk ties from the hall. Gasps rippled through the room. Amelia whispered, "But who, Monsieur Poirot?" Sobbed softly, Sir Reginald's hand tightening on his chair. "You knew Evelyn?" he whispered. She nodded, broken. "It was long ago, before our marriage." Jenkins swore silence, but he wanted to tell Clara the truth. Clara gasped, tears spilling. "My father, he never said." Poirot's gaze softened. "Oui, mademoiselle. He protected you, even in death." The room tensed as Poirot turned to Thorne. "Dr. Thorne, your motive was threefold: to silence Jenkins, who opposed your engagement to Amelia, fearing your fortune-hunting past; to bury his knowledge of your malpractice suit; and to secure Amelia's inheritance. You visited Jenkins that evening, claiming a medical checkup, laced his tea with sedative from your missing vial, and waited. At midnight, with Jenkins drowsy, you used a duplicate key obtained from the household spares practiced on the lock, entered, shot him with his own pistol, and staged the scene. The string trick locked the door, the key pulled inside. You burned the thread in the fireplace, leaving only ashes and a cigarette burn. Your error." Thorne leapt to his feet, face flushed. "Lies! You've no proof." Japp stepped forward, but Poirot raised a hand. "The proof, docteur, is in the details. The smudged fingerprints on the pistol, wiped but not fully, showing your haste. The second letter's ink matches your fountain pen, found in the library. The attack on Finch, your attempt to frame him using his own spade, but a servant saw you lurking near the garden." Finch growled, "I knew it was you, skulking about." Amelia, tears streaming, turned to Thorne. "Victor, tell me it's not true." He faltered, his defiance crumbling. I only wanted us to be free, Amelia. Jenkins would have ruined everything." The admission sealed his fate. Japp's shadow. Finch, rubbing his bandaged head, muttered, "Good riddance to the lot of 'em." The household, fractured, began to mend, each member facing their truths. Poirot concluded, his voice soft but firm. The locked room was no mystery, mes amis. It was a stage, set by a desperate mind. The little gray cells, they see the order beneath chaos. He bowed slightly, his mustache twitching with satisfaction. Japp clapped him on the shoulder. "You've done it again, Poirot, though I'll never understand your blasted riddles." As dawn fully broke, the fog lifted, revealing the silver gates in their full splendor. The constable escorted Thorne to a waiting car, his scholarly facade replaced by defeat. Poirot prepared to depart, his suitcase packed, his mission complete. "Silver Gatehouse," he murmured, gazing at the estate. "It holds its peace once more." The family gathered to bid him farewell. Sir Reginald shook his hand, promising reform. Lady Evelyn offered a tearful thank you. Clara, now secure in her inheritance, whispered, "I'd be proud of you, monsieur. Amelia, still fragile, managed to smile. "You've given me clarity, if not happiness." Charles, sober and humbled, nodded silently. Finch, back in the garden, tipped his cap grudgingly. As Poirot's car rolled through the silver gates, the sun climbed higher, banishing the last wisps of mist. Justice had been served, not with vengeance but with truth, a fitting end for a puzzle so intricate. Chapter 8. The Hidden Motive. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Mystery Manor Tales. I'm your host, Elias Thorne, ushering you deeper into the intricate web of Death of the Butler at Silver Gatehouse, a Killer Hercule Poirot story. If you're just joining us, you've entered a 1920s English estate where every shadow conceals a secret. For our loyal sleuths, thank you for staying through the twists and turns. Thought the case was closed? Think again. Picture yourself by a flickering fire, the world hushed outside, as we unraveled the murder of Alfred Jenkins. The butler found shot in a locked room, sedated and staged as suicide. Hercule Poirot's deductions, the string trick, the cigarette burn, the forged anonymous letter, had seemed to seal the case. Yet, as Poirot stood in the library, his small frame silhouetted against the leaded windows, a niggling doubt stirred his little gray cells. "The puzzle, it is not complete," he murmured to Inspector Japp, who was packing his notes, eager to return to London. "There is a motive hidden, deeper than we have seen." Japp, adjusting his hat, sighed. "You've got your man, Poirot. Thorne's confessed to enough. Motive means opportunity. What more do you want?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "The truth, Inspector, is like a fine tapestry. One loose thread and the pattern unravels. There is another hand at work here, a hidden motive." The household, still reeling from Thorne's arrest, gathered uneasily in the drawing room, their faces a mix of relief and lingering fear. Sir Reginald Harrington sat heavily, his authority diminished by shame. Lady Evelyn, her locket now tucked away, seemed fragile, her secret affair with Jenkins exposed. Charles Harrington, sober but restless, paced by the fire. Amelia, heartbroken by Thorne's betrayal, sat alone, her eyes red-rimmed. Clara Benson, Jenkins's niece, clutched her inheritance papers, her grief tempered by resolve. Harold Finch, his head still bandaged from the attack, glowered from the corner, his pipe unlit. Poirot addressed them, his voice steady and deliberate. "Mes amis, you believe the case closed with Dr. Thorne's arrest, but Hercule Poirot sees a shadow behind the shadow. The murder of Jenkins. It was not solely about love or fortune. There is a deeper motive, one that binds this household in a conspiracy of silence." Gasps rippled through the room. Charles stopped pacing. "What are you on about, Poirot? Thorne admitted it." Poirot raised a hand. "Oui, but his confession, Finch's tool shed, hidden under leaves." "This glove," Poirot said, holding it aloft, "bears traces of Jenkins' blood. It is not Finch's, as I first thought, but Charles's, monogrammed with his initials." Charles paled, stepping back. "That's impossible. I dropped a handkerchief, yes, but a glove? Never." The room erupted. Sir Reginald roared, "Charles, what have you done?" Amelia stood trembling. "Brother, tell me it's not true." Poirot calmed them. "No, Monsieur Charles is not the killer, but he is complicit. The glove was planted by another to frame him, just as the handkerchief was a clumsy misdirection. But why? To divert suspicion from the true conspirator. Poirot turned to Clara. Mademoiselle, you heard Jenkins argue with someone that night. You saw a shadow. Was it Charles or someone else? Clara hesitated, her sharp eyes flickering. I thought it was Lady Evelyn, but now I'm not sure. The shadow was tall, cloaked, near the east wing. Poirot's gaze shifted to Sir Reginald. Monsieur, your safe contained not only embezzlement papers but a ledger of recent transactions, loans to a London financier, tied to Charles's debts. Jenkins knew, and he confronted someone about it. Sir Reginald's face darkened. Jenkins was meddling in my affairs, yes, but I didn't kill him. A new twist emerged. The second anonymous letter, postmarked locally, was not in Thorne's handwriting, as Poirot had initially suspected, but matched samples from Sir Reginald's desk. You, monsieur, Poirot said, wrote the second letter to deflect suspicion after Jenkins' death, knowing Thorne would be blamed. Sir Reginald sputtered. Preposterous! Why would I? Poirot cut in. Because Jenkins' blackmail threatened not just your reputation, but your control over the estate. You loaned money to cover Charles's debts, but the financier was nodded, tears falling. Uncle Alfred, he trusted you, sir. Poirot's deductions crystallized. Thorne killed Jenkins for his own ends, Amelia's inheritance, his past hidden. But Sir Reginald orchestrated the silence, ensuring the family's secrets stayed buried. Jap, stunned, signaled the constable. Sir Reginald, you're under arrest for conspiracy to murder. The handcuffs clicked, and the household reeled. Lady Evelyn sobbed. How could you, Reginald? Amelia, torn between grief and anger, turned away. Charles, shaken, muttered, all for money. Clara, clutching her inheritance papers, whispered, justice for Uncle Alfred. Poirot addressed the remaining clues. The cigarette burn, Thorne's, as he smoked nervously post-murder. The scratched lock, Thorne's practice, but Sir Reginald provided the duplicate key from the estate's spares. The footprint, a red herring from Finch's quarrel. The locket, Lady Evelyn's genuine past, irrelevant to the crime. He paused, his eyes softening. This family, it is wounded, but it may heal with truth. As Sir Reginald was led away, the drawing room fell silent, the fire's crackle the only sound. Poirot's work was nearly done, but the hidden motive, greed and control, had reshaped the case. The little gray cells, he murmured. They see what the heart conceals. Chapter 9. The Final Confrontation. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Mystery Manor Tales. I'm your host, Elias Thorne, guiding you to the heart-pounding climax of Death of the Butler at Silver Gatehouse, a Killer Hercule Poirot story. If you're new to our tale, you stepped into a 1920s English estate where deception lurks behind every velvet curtain. For our steadfast sleuths, thank you for weathering the storm of secrets with us. Picture yourself in a cozy armchair, the world outside hushed, as we unravel Chapter 9 of this 90-minute odyssey, the moment truth triumphs. Let's connect before we dive in. Where Are You, sedated and staged as suicide, had unraveled a web of secrets. Jenkins's gentle blackmail to expose Sir Reginald's embezzlement, Lady Evelyn's long-ago affair, and a conspiracy between Dr. Victor Thorne and Sir Reginald to silence the butler. Thorne, arrested for the killing, and Sir Reginald, charged with conspiracy, awaited justice. Yet, Hercule Poirot, standing in the library with his impeccable suit and waxed mustache, sensed an unresolved thread. "The tapestry, it is almost complete," he murmured to Inspector Japp, who was reviewing statements. "But one knot remains, a final deception." Japp, rubbing his temples, groaned. "You've got your killers, Poirot. Thorne pulled the trigger, Sir Reginald pulled the strings. What's left to unravel?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The motive, Inspector. It is not singular. There is a shadow behind the conspiracy, a mind that manipulated both men." The household, fractured by revelations, gathered in the drawing room at Poirot's summons, their faces a mosaic of dread and exhaustion. Lady Evelyn sat pale, her hands clasped tightly. Charles Harrington, sober but restless, leaned against the mantel. Amelia, still reeling from Thorne's betrayal, sat alone, her eyes distant. Clara Benson, Jenkins's niece, clutched her inheritance papers, her grief tempered by resolve. Harold Finch, his head bandaged from the attack, stood by the door, his scowl softened by curiosity. Poirot stood before the fireplace, its flames casting flickering shadows across the oak-paneled walls. "Mes amis," he began, his voice steady and deliberate. "The murder of Alfred Jenkins was a crime of layers, each designed to obscure the truth. Dr. Thorne killed with the sedative and gunshot, using a string trick to lock the door from outside. Sir Reginald conspired, planting a glove to frame Charles, protecting his embezzled fortune. But there is a deeper truth, a mastermind who wove this web, exploiting their weaknesses. Reginald's embezzlement, but a plan to sell the estate to a London financier, tied to Charles's debts. You, madam, discovered this through Jenkins, who confided in you." Lady Evelyn gasped, her hands trembling. I knew Reginald was in trouble, but I didn't." Poirot raised a hand. "You did more than know. You manipulated Thorne and Sir Reginald, playing on their fears. Thorne, desperate to marry Amelia and secure her inheritance, feared Jenkins's opposition. Sir Reginald, terrified of exposure, needed Jenkins silenced. You, madam, whispered to both, fanning their motives. The locket, engraved with Jenkins's initials, it was not a keepsake, but a signal to him, a reminder of your shared past, urging him to act against Sir Reginald. When he refused, you ensured his death." The room erupted. Sir Reginald roared, "Evelyn, you betrayed me!" Charles stepped forward, stunned. "Mother, you orchestrated this?" Amelia sobbed, "No, it can't be." Clara, tears falling, whispered, "Uncle Alfred trusted you." Poirot continued, relentless. "The second letter, madam, you wrote it, not Sir Reginald. The handwriting, analyzed by Japp's expert, matches your private correspondence, hidden in your boudoir. You planted it to frame Thorne fully, knowing Sir Reginald would take the bait." Lady Evelyn's composure shattered, her voice a whisper. I wanted to protect the family. Reginald's debts, Charles's gambling, they'd ruin us. Jenkins was going to tell all, destroy Amelia's future. I told Victor to stop him, told Reginald it was for the estate. She broke down, sobbing. Japp, stunned, signaled the constable. "Lady Evelyn, you're under arrest for incitement to murder." The handcuffs clicked, a stark sound in the silent room. Poirot clarified the final clues. "The scratched luck, Thorn's practice. But you, madam, provided the duplicate key from the estate spares, knowing Jenkins's habits. The glove, Sir Reginald's act, but planted clues. All served to hide her influence. Justice, it is served not with vengeance, but with clarity." Japp, shaking his head, muttered, "You've outdone yourself, Poirot. 3 arrests in 1 case." As the constables led Lady Evelyn away, the drawing room fell silent, the fire's glow a faint comfort. Sir Reginald, facing his own trial, vowed to confess his embezzlement. "For Jenkins's memory," he said, broken. Charles, humbled, promised to reform. Amelia, alone but resolute, spoke of starting anew. Clara, now secure, planned to honor her uncle's legacy. Finch returned to his gardens, muttering about cleaner work than this lot. Poirot, his task complete, stood by the window gazing at the silver gates. "The truth. It is a heavy burden, but it frees the soul," he murmured. The little gray cells, satisfied, rested at last. Chapter 10. Justice at Dawn. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Mystery Manor Tales. I'm your host, Elias Thorne, guiding you to the serene close of our captivating tale, Death of the Butler at Silver Gatehouse, a Killer Hercule Poirot story. If you're new to our story, you've joined us in a 1920s English estate where secrets have unraveled under the keen gaze of Hercule Poirot. For our steadfast sleuths, thank you for journeying through every twist and shadow to reach this final chapter. Picture yourself by a warm hearth, the morning light soft outside, as we unveil Chapter 10 of this 90-minute odyssey, the dawn of justice and renewal. Before we begin, let's share a moment. Where are you listening from tonight? A quiet village in the Cotswolds, or perhaps a lively apartment in Sao Paulo? Drop it in the comments. It's like gathering one last time in Silver Gatehouse's drawing room. And tell me, how did you feel about the final twist with Lady Evelyn? Did it shock you, or did you see it coming? His mustache impeccably waxed, ready to depart. Yet, the echoes of the case lingered, and the household gathered one last time to bid farewell to the man who had brought truth to light. The drawing room, where so much had unfolded, was bathed in morning light, the oak panels warm and the ancestral portraits less stern in the glow. The fire, now a gentle smolder, cast a soft warmth over the remaining members of the household. Charles Harrington stood by the window, his usual slouch replaced by a straighter posture, his face marked by a newfound resolve. Amelia Harrington sat on a velvet armchair, her auburn curls loose, her eyes still shadowed but carrying a spark of determination. Clara Benson, the housemaid and Jenkins' niece, revealed as his daughter, clutched a small photograph of her uncle, her sharp features softened by gratitude. Harold Finch, the gardener, leaned against the doorframe, his bandaged head a reminder of his narrow escape, his pipe finely lit, sending curls of smoke upward. Inspector Japp, his paperwork complete, stood beside Poirot, a grudging respect in his eyes. Poirot addressed the group, his voice calm and measured, carrying the weight of finality. Mes amis, the tragedy of Alfred Jenkins is resolved, but its lessons endure. The locked room was no mystery. It was a stage, set by Dr. Thorne's hand, guided by Lady Evelyn's cunning, and enabled by Sir Reginald's desperation. The truth, it is a heavy burden, but it frees the soul. He paused, his eyes sweeping the room, lingering on each face. Let us reflect on the journey and what it means for Silver Gatehouse. He began with the resolution of the clues, ensuring no thread remained loose. The locked room, a simple trick. Fine curtain thread, pulled through the keyhole to lock the door from outside. The key drawn inside, the thread burned in the fireplace. The ashes, they confirmed the silk. The sedative in the tea. Dr. Thorne's, administered Alfred, my father. He wanted justice, didn't he? Poirot's gaze softened. Oui, mademoiselle. Jenkins sought to right wrongs, to protect you and this family, even at great cost. His diary, hidden beneath the floorboard, revealed his heart. A man of loyalty, not greed. Clara clutched the photograph tighter, a tear falling. I'll honor him, monsieur. With the inheritance, I'll start a new life, as he wished. Amelia, her voice steady despite her pain, addressed Poirot. You've given me truth, monsieur, but it's a bitter gift. Victor's betrayal, mother's deception. How do I move forward? Poirot tilted his head, his tone gentle. Mademoiselle Amelia, the heart heals by forging its own path. You are strong, and your future is yours to shape, free of secrets. She nodded, a faint smile breaking through. I'll study art in Paris, away from this place. A fresh start. Charles stepped forward, his eyes clear. Father's crimes, my own mistakes. I've been a fool, Monsieur Poirot, but I'll settle my debts honestly, work for it, no more running. Poirot's mustache twitched with approval. Courage, Monsieur Charles, is found in facing one's failures. You will rebuild. Finch, puffing his pipe, grunted. This house, too many shadows. I'm stayin' in my garden, where things grow honest. Poirot chuckled softly. Monsieur Finch, your simplicity is wisdom. The earth does not lie. Finch tipped his cap, a rare gesture of respect. Poirot turned to the broader impact. Sir Reginald, now in custody, has vowed to confess his embezzlement, making amends to those wronged in India. Lady Evelyn, her role as instigator revealed, faces justice for inciting murder. Dr. Thorne, the hand that pulled the trigger, will answer for his crime. The estate, it survives, but its soul is cleansed by truth. Jack Gatehouse, its secrets are laid bare, and its peace restored. The sun climbed higher, banishing the last traces of fog, and the house stood as a monument to truth's triumph. As the car vanished into the hills, the household returned to their lives, each carrying the weight of lessons learned. Silver Gatehouse, once a crucible of deception, now held the promise of renewal. A new chapter for a family forged anew in the light of dawn.